The more we study human nature, the more we become aware of the unsounded depths that are back of each individual. There's the famous story that you may know, a very brief one, which has a point in this regard. Someone once asked Antonio Stradivarius why he made violins. Antonio looked kind of nonplussed for a second and then replied, God made Antonio to make violins. Now, I have the belief from a pretty long career of observation and reflection that there is a definite reason behind the life of every human being. There is a particular purpose. Nature does not produce non-essentials. Nature has not fashioned some persons to succeed and others to fail. Nature has never been extravagant with life. Every living thing fulfills part of a plan. And this plan in the human being has been individualized. Each person is here for a purpose. Now, why are so many not aware of this purpose? I think the answer lies in the fact that the average person is confused by pressures that are artificial. He comes into this life perhaps in the highest degree of his intelligence. As a newborn babe, he is probably wiser than he will ever be again in this life. That perhaps is one of the reasons why so many come weeping into the world. But we also realize that many children have strange and mysterious depths even in infancy. Their little faces seem to bear witness to something more than the obvious. The moment, however, the child is born, it is regarded as a kind of lump of putty. Everybody wants to get their fingers in it. Everyone wants to help this child succeed. And before they get through, they may definitely force the child to become a failure. In an effort to assume that this material world in which we live for a few years is the most important place in the universe, and that to achieve some minor success here is the outstanding distinction to which a human being can attain. The process of fitting the personality into the traditional patterns closes in around the small child. He is told what to believe and how to believe. If he is in a religious family, he is told who to worship and what church is proper for him. And as he goes into school, he comes into contact with a mass of conditioned associates. Children like himself, who have been more or less destroyed before they even reach grammar school. Destroyed in the sense that the internal pressure of a reality behind themselves is being continuously blocked. After a time, this growing person begins to assume that adjustment with the world in which he lives, adjustment in the sense of acceptance, is of the primary importance. He is exposed to all kinds of conditionings. Among others, he is taught that he must gradually accumulate an education that will enable him to make a living. He is impressed with the psychosis of success. If he is lacking in aggressive ambitions, these are stimulated if possible. And if they cannot be stimulated, it is assumed he will end up as a second-class citizen. The individual never really is encouraged to make use of his own resources. Yet behind this pressure constantly exerted upon him, there is something else, and that may be described perhaps as the will of life, the eternal reality, which is far deeper and more important than all of the various superficial levels and structures that are built upon it. The only way we can really approach this is to realize that when we have received the full conditioning of our society and have attained physical maturity, that perhaps we will be able to pause for a moment and try to find out a little more about ourselves. Usually, however, this moment of pause only comes when physical or emotional reverses break down the structure of the so-called physical, material, industrial plan for living. Nearly always a crisis, a great disappointment, a heartache, a desperate illness. These are the kinds of pressures that perhaps have been placed here to remind us that we have an individual existence, and that this existence must be given expression, or the life we are living will remain incomplete. There are very few of us who manage to get through this world without some kind of sorrow, without reverses, disillusionments, and even despairs. And these bear witness, in most cases, to the fact that we are not fulfilling the purpose for which we were created. The materialist doesn't believe there is a purpose, and therefore he is constantly contributing to a purposeless existence. His only out in this is material advancement. The individual becomes the banker, then perhaps another individual becomes the university professor, and in these achievements comes to regard his life as fulfilled. Yet in reality, he has gone through 50, 60, 70 years of physical existence and learned virtually nothing. He has not even learned to direct his energies toward the fulfillment of a universal procedure very much bigger than any material ambition can possibly be. Where are we going to equate this? How are we going to approach it? Well, perhaps one way is to study ourselves at any age, whenever the impulse first arises within us. In the midst of all the things we are doing because they appear reasonable or inevitable, sometime we can ask ourselves, what would I really want to do? If conditions permitted to be to make a completely free choice, in what direction would my natural instincts impel me? It may well be that I'm a successful lawyer, but I always wanted to be a sea captain. Another individual always wanted to be a poet, but was never able to get around to doing much more than signing checks. What would the person be if he was able to fulfill the deepest parts of his own life? What would the small, quiet voice inside of him recommend if the pressure of outside over-influence was not there? I think that every living thing from the mineral kingdom on has some kind of an intuitional inner life. And this intuitional inner life impels that living thing, whatever it is, to fulfill the purpose for which it was created. To assume that the universal destiny is fulfilled by a person becoming a political leader or a major economist or an advisor to something, such cannot possibly be regarded as important to nature. Nature, which is a leveler of all things, nature which moves behind all the processes that we recognize, certainly is not too much concerned as to whether we have a swimming pool or not. Nature has a job of its own, and nature is working through living things to fulfill a common good. And each of us is in some way an instrument in this plan. And it is very important for us to try to understand the natural purpose for humanity. Why was the human being created? Why was the breath of life breathed into him? Why was he given a body such as he has? What was nature's purpose in placing him in an environmental world such as he knows? These questions are overlooked and ignored because they run contrary to our approved policies for conduct. Yet we cannot assume that nature was frustrated by the fall of the Roman Empire, or that the divine plan was overthrown by Adolf Hitler, or Alexander the Great, or Genghis Khan. These are episodes, incidents on the outer surface of human existence. They bear witness to ignorance, and false ambitions, arrogance, tyranny, which are not naturally given to us by deity. The idea that we are a compound of good and bad, with for the most part weakness predominating, is not solid when we contemplate it in terms of nature. Nature has put us together in an extraordinary way. It has created a being that even the greatest scientists cannot yet even estimate. Man is full of wonders. Nature has conspired to produce a miracle and called it humanity. Now the question is, what is this miracle going to produce? What is going to justify the millions of years of physical evolution that lies behind man? What is going to justify the constant unfoldment of faculties and powers? Most of them have been perverted. They have been degraded into instruments of profit. But behind the individual is a creativity that is superior to the uses that have been made of the creative instinct. Back of the individual is a resource infinitely greater than anything he ever uses. Why doesn't he use it? Well, to the most people, there is not even the realization that it exists. They have lived on the surface of themselves from the beginning and expect to end there. And having had this magnificent fabric bestowed upon them, they depart from this world with very little that they have contributed to the advancement of anything. How then does man get this incredible potential? The answer seems to be only one possible solution, and that is reincarnation. The individual is not here for the first or last time. He is here as part of a chain of embodiments. And the purpose of this chain of embodiments is the enrichment of the inner life of the individual. He has grown up through thousands of years, millions of years perhaps, of adjustment or neo-adjustment with environment. He has gradually come nearer and nearer to becoming able to use rather than abuse the circumstances that exist around him. Now, in this long procedure,